All right, guys. I think this is the 10th part of this series, book 12. Usually we do 2 books per installation or what have you, but bit off tonight, so we'll probably only do book 12. Normally I don't skim them first because I committed to reading every word and doing commentary, but this one I did a bit, and it's one of the better ones, one of the better segments, I think. And before we get into it, I guess I just want to preface all of this once again by saying that just as much as the material does have real wisdom and value, especially in the context of providing a model, right? It's not about following a dogma. It's not about memorizing scripture, right? It's about reintegrating the idea of logic and reason and intellectual development into a spiritual framework. Something that most of the systems that we have had institutionalized and sort of forced on us over the last, I don't know how long, 2,000 years, have, there's a reason that they have avoided that. And in this particular moment, we face an existential crisis. We have some sort of technological singularity looming. We are on the precipice of some sort of shift that is truly unprecedented to a degree that is almost unspeakably, exponentially greater than any, certainly in our lifetime, and quite likely in human history. And in order to navigate that, there is a sort of holistic perception that you can develop. And in my opinion, the only way to really engineer that is to have a balance of intellectual prowess, critical thinking skills, reasoning skills, transcendental experiences like psychedelics and ritual magic. We need all of these things integrated in order to manifest the kind of consciousness that we need to navigate what is here. It's not even a matter of what's coming, And one of the things we got into in the last stream is that aside from the deliberate oppression of the evolution of consciousness, which is a real thing for sure, it's one of the primary focuses, I think, of the overlords, because they know, they're well aware of the psychology and the sort of orientation that the masses have to have in order for them to maintain their position. And, one of the questions I see people asking a lot is, why now? If they're really going for this complete control, and it's a matter of necessity. The threat that looms over the status quo due to AI, psychedelic renaissance, the reemergence of ancient wisdom has never been greater. And so, that's actually, I believe, the catalyst for what we're seeing. The extreme devotion to divide and conquer agenda. The absurd political posturing and propagandizing is so over the top. Historically, I guess I always comment on this kind of stuff when it happens. And you guys that follow me might have noticed I haven't said much about all the craziness that's been happening lately. The reason is that I'm like, stupefied is not the right word. But it's like Bob Dylan once said, I'll know my song well before I start singing. And there's so much happening at once that it's difficult to separate the wheat from the chaff and figure out what the real relevance is and to have any confidence that your perception actually means anything, you know? So, bulletin point of that, I kind of went off on a bit of a rant thinking about it even. That's why I'm not talking about it yet. The kind of perspective that is conferred by this kind of knowledge and this kind of thinking is the only possible remedy. And so, you know, Hermes traditionally is met at a crossroads. He's often depicted with horns, at least the Greek Hermes. God of music and magic. This is the Christian devil. This is what they modeled it after. You have to ask yourself why. You probably don't have to ask yourself. All of the things that represent the greatest resources for people that are potentially a threat to the status quo have been demonized. And really, one of my fundamental primary objectives in life is to do what I can to reverse that engineered perception. Let me check in with the chat real quick. The horizontal stream isn't live? Oh, no. Thank you for telling me that. It's too bad, though, these guys missed the little speech there. Not only was it not live, it's not allowing me to interact with the chat for some reason. Hold on, guys. Let me try to see if I can figure out what the hell's going on. Well, if you missed my little introductory speech, it might be worth it to go back later and check that out. Also, don't miss my upcoming guide to the best psychedelic music, like music that you actually should listen to in an entheogenic journey. It's going to have some amazing recommendations. In fact, the number one, it's going to be in order of, like, you know, amazeballs-ness. And the number one album, I really believe, is the greatest musical accomplishment in human history. Which is quite a statement, but if you eat some boomers and listen to it, nearly 100% chance that you'll agree. All right, so the 12th book of Hermes Trismegistus, his crater or monas. The workman made this universal world not with his hands, but his word. Now, we all know what that means, right? The word is a vibration. It's an oscillating wave. That wave gave rise to the light, you know? And a lot of people take that and they say, well, it proves that the Bible was really written by God or divinely inspired. No, it doesn't. Initiates of the Hermetic mysteries have known this sort of thing for far longer than that book has existed. Therefore, thus think of him as present everywhere and being always, and making all things, and one above, that by his will hath framed the things that are. For that is his body, not tangible, nor visible, nor measurable, nor extensible, nor like any other body. For it is neither fire, nor water, nor air, nor wind, but all these things are of him. For being good, he hath dedicated that name unto himself alone. But he would also adorn the earth with the ornament of a divine body. Before we go any further, so I don't forget this, the other day I had this sort of mental image of this like incomprehensibly complex sort of geometry. And the narrator in my mind that seems other oftentimes explained to me that it was a nearly infinite vector of algorithms. And every time one of these algorithms creates a vector, whenever they cross, a third thing is created, and this is a hermetic idea. That from the interaction of two antinomies, two opposite forces, a third thing arises of a higher nature. This can be seen in evolution with children that surpass their parents. It would be more evident if the overlords would stop putting dissonance in that process. But what I'm getting at here is at the basis of the universal structure, there's basically just light or electromagnetism. And all of those things, fire, water, air, wind, all of them arise from that. And so that's the kind of translation that is, employed to read the book of nature, as they say. But he would also adorn the earth, but with the ornament of a divine body. And he sent man an immortal and immortal wight. And in case you haven't been following, a wight is just a being, a creature. And man had more than all living creatures and the world because his speech and mind. For man became the spectator of the works of God and wondered and acknowledged the Maker. For he divided speech among all men, but not mind. And yet he envied not any, for envy comes not thither, but is abode here below in the souls of men that do not have a mind. Thoth asks, but wherefore, Father, did not God distribute the mind to all men? Hermes, because it pleased him, O son, to set that in the middle among all souls as a reward to strive for. Thoth, and where hath he set it? Hermes answers, filling a large cup or bowl therewith, he sent it down, giving also a crier or proclaimer. And he commanded him to proclaim these things to the souls of men. Dip and wash thyself, thou that art able in this cup or bowl, thou that believeth that thou shalt return to him that sent this cup, thou that acknowledged whereunto thou wert made. As many therefore as understood the proclamation and were baptized or doused into the mind, these were made partakers of knowledge and became perfect men receiving the mind. So that's interesting to me because, I'm ready for the rainy season to be over. I'll tell you that, man. It's just raining all the time. It's so cold. The idea of NPCs. And that idea actually isn't as new. Forget about this. As you would think. That woman, I can't remember, Dolores Canyon, I think. I've heard her talk about this in a video that looked like it was probably 40 years old. It sounds really bad, but the idea basically that it's actually true, that there are masses of humans that are more or less automatons, and their function is basically just to be cogs in the machine that supports the freedom and productivity of the actual thinking, soul-having people. And the trick, and one of the reasons why this stuff is kept secret, is that is not, understanding that is not permission to look down on them. It's not permission to see them as less than human. Because those that are above owe everything to those that are below. The feet drag below the hells, the head rises above the heavens. And that's another reason that this kind of knowledge needs to be reinstated. Because that sort of egoic, self-serving, oh my gosh, sorry guys. God damn it. mentality is destroying humanity. And the issue is, people are sort of engineered or predisposed to think in terms of black and white. Subtlety is difficult for a lot of people, especially when it comes to perception of ontological models. But nothing really is black and white. And so this cultivation of subtlety in thought is one of the reasons why this intellectual work is prescribed to initiates. Check the chat again, because yeah, looks like we're cool. I feel like there was something else. We'll keep going. But as many as missed of the proclamation, they received speech, but not mind, being ignorant whereunto they were made, or by whom. But their senses are just like brute beasts, and having their temper and anger and wrath, they do not admire the things worthy of looking on. But wholly addicted to the pleasures and desires of the body, they believe that man was made for them. But as many as partake of the gift of God, these, O Thoth, in comparison of their works, are rather immortal than mortal men, comprehending all things in their mind, which are upon earth, which are in heaven, and if there be anything above heaven, and lifting up themselves so high they see the good, and seeing it they account it a miserable calamity to make their abode here. And despising all things bodily and unbodily, they make haste to the one and only. Thus, O Thoth, is the knowledge of the mind, the beholding of divine things, and the understanding of God, the cup itself being divine. Thoth, and I, O Father, would be baptized and drenched therein. Hermes, except thou first hate thy body, O son, thou canst not love thyself, but loving thyself thou shalt have the mind, and having the mind, thou shalt also partake the knowledge or science. Thoth asks, how meanest thou, O Father? Hermes responds, because it is impossible, O son, to be conversant about things mortal and divine. For the things that are, being two bodies and things incorporeal, wherein is the mortal and the divine, the election or choice of either is left to him that will choose, for no man can choose both. And of whichsoever the choice is made, the other being diminished or overcome, magnifieth the act or operation of the other. This is one of those points that I am at odds with Hermes. I don't think that we have to deny the senses, and I don't think we have to choose between a commitment to mortal knowledge or divine knowledge. There is a balance. And in the later systems of the Hermetic fraternities, the fundamental commitment is to knowledge of self balanced with knowledge of the universe. Because if you truly understand your proclivities, talents, predispositions, and you align yourself fundamentally with that, because your being is subject to the rule of the laws of the universe, the natural inclination is for it to come into homeostasis, first with itself and then with the external environment. And so if you're successful at this, you will be caught up in the evolutionary or developmental trajectory of the universe at large. And this empowers you, but also sets you on a course where your will is congruent with the collective well-being. And, there's a lot of talk about communism right now. Speaking of politics, I kind of opened this with that. And a lot of people were shocked when the TikTok thing happened, and they went to the Chinese app, and they're looking at Shanghai, and everything's clean, and food that's imported from the United States is cheaper than it is in the United States somehow. Rent is like the same as it is in Peru. Healthcare is free and high-tech and good. People are not slaves. They are not starving. And, there's a lot of shock there because people in the United States have been told their whole lives that, it's terrible to be Chinese and that, communism without fail is going to cause just nothing but poverty and starvation. And the truth is, it's not pure communism. It is a hybridized system, and it's always hybridized systems that are best. But what I'm getting at here is that just like the mortal and divine thing that I was mentioning, how you have to have a balance. The imbalance in the United States is self-serving capitalism, right? It's not mediated with a concern for the collective well-being to the extent that it should be. The problem in most communist regimes is that they're not really communist. All of these schism games are usually employed in such a way by always actually, as far as I can tell, by the overlords to serve themselves under the guise of serving the people. This is how the propaganda is engineered in the United States and everywhere else. So what I'm getting at here, once again, it's about balancing the pentagram, And I think that one of the real keys to having any hope of solving this is that we have to find new language. Because as soon as we talk about having more of a connection to the collective, the heavily indoctrinated person is, commie. So I think that's a really essential. Even the word spirituality, I think, maybe needs to be devolved. And magic, it has all these negative connotations. Terence McKenna talked about this in the late 90s, that we have to re-engineer language for a new paradigm. So just food for thought. By the way, do me a favor, hit the like button, share, subscribe. Consider becoming a patron. You get access to 6 years of premium material. I do consultations, video calls and whatnot, guitar lessons, all sorts of things. And we're having events in the Sacred Valley in March and sooner, potentially. You can email me about that. And also in Manu in May in the jungle. So if you're interested in that, shoot me an email. Well, that's interesting because it kind of sounds like if I had waited, he was going to kind of agree with me that whichsoever the choice is made, the other being diminished or overcome magnifieth the act or operation of the other. And that is an essential thing to understand, that the separation of reason and logic and science from our spiritual life has actually diminished the potency of both. Science, without an understanding of the unification of nature and the reality of a universal mind that has oversight in evolution, which is something that they're proving despite themselves right now, and consciousness arising from the subatomic level and not from neurons. And spirituality without reason and logic, this is why we have so many flaky, muddle-headed mystics with wind whistling between their ears, The choice of the better, therefore, is not only best for him that choose it by deifying man, but it also showeth piety and religion towards God. But the choice of the worst destroys a man, but does nothing against God, save that as pomps or pageants, when they come abroad, cannot do anything themselves but hinder. After the same manner also do these make pomps and pageants in the world, being seduced by the pleasures of the body. These things being so, O Thoth, that things have been and are so plenteously ministered to us from God, let them proceed also from us without any scarcity or sparing. For God is innocent or guiltless, but we are the causes of evil, preferring them before the good. Thou seest, O son, how many bodies we must go beyond, and how many choirs of demons, and what continuity and courses of stars, that we may make haste to the one and only God. For the good is not to be transcended. It is unbounded and infinite, unto itself without beginning. But unto us, seeming to have a beginning, even our knowledge of it. For our knowledge is not the beginning of it, but shows us the beginning of it being known unto us. Let us therefore lay hold of the beginning, and we shall quickly go through all these things. Now, something else I have to take issue with there, the idea that God is innocent and we are guilty of evil. If you know anything, just the most basic fundamental tenets of psychology, external influences create influences in the subconscious, and the subconscious governs the overwhelming majority of our behavior until we start to individuate and awaken and change the ratio. And so to say that the mind that created all of these circumstances and influence is not responsible to any degree is patently ridiculous, I think. Let us therefore lay hold of the beginning, and we shall quickly go through all these things. It is indeed a difficult thing to leave those things that are accustomable and present and turn us to those things that are ancient and according to the original. For these things that appear delight us, but make the things that appear not hard to believe, or the things that appear not are hard to believe. The things most apparent are evil, but the good is secret or hidden. Or to the things that appear, for it hath neither form nor figure. For this cause it is like to itself, but unlike everything else, for it is impossible, and anything incorporeal should be made known or appear to a body. For this is the difference between the like and the unlike wanteth always somewhat of the like. For the unity, beginning, and root of all things, as the root and beginning, nothing is without a beginning, but the beginning is of nothing, but of itself, for it is the beginning of all other things. Therefore it is, seeing it is not from another beginning. Unity, therefore, being the beginning, containeth every number, but itself is contained of none, and begetteth every number, itself being begotten of no other number. So there's a concept that will help to frame all of this, and the idea is that at the very core of creation, the seed of everything is absolute nothingness. And it contains every number, right? Divide something by zero. What happens? And this infinite perfection cannot have a form. It cannot have any sort of designation, because that creates a disruption of its perfection, right? So this unity, paradoxically, is nothingness. This is the only possible unity. And as above, so below also kind of references the fact that the entire process of creation is by means of replication by reflection, repeating patterns, right? You can see it in the Fibonacci sequence, the repetitions of history, form and order, symmetry, all has to do with repetition. And so because the seed of creation is a paradox, everything contains its contradiction that has emanated from this. And so unity, the only possible one thing is no thing. If you have an object in space, then you have two things. And there's another little clue there, that itself being begotten of no other number. Everything that is begotten or made is imperfect and may be divided, increased, and diminished. But to the perfect there happeneth none of these. And that which is increased by unity, but is consumed and vanished through weakness, being not able to receive the unity. The image of God have I described to thee, O Thoth, as well as I could, which if thou did diligently consider and view by the eyes of the mind and hear, believe me, son, thou shalt find the way to things above, or rather the image itself will lead thee. But the spectacle of sight hath this peculiar and proper. Them that can see and behold it, it holds fast and draws unto them. As they say, the lodestone doth iron. That last bit, I think, is a reference to the law of attraction. That once you have oriented yourself and you have clarified your intent, your purpose, your sense of self, then you will attract only to you things that are of that nature and nothing else. A lot of people, including myself in the past, make the mistake of trying to amplify their will and to use magic and manifestation before you have really prepared the soil. In which case, the things that you attract will be tainted. They will be as you willed, but they will be carrying dissonance and will be as an interference pattern in your life, coming under the appearance of dreams fulfilled. This is also expressed as Satan may come as an angel of light. Well, it looks like it only took us a half hour to get through 12, so maybe we will continue through book 13. Let me check in with the chat again. It is the Corpus Hermeticum, which is mostly conversations between Thoth, I think it's supposed to be, taught, and Hermes Trismegistus, quantum foam-based consciousness mind from the subatomic beer froth of pre-manifest primordial reality. That's awesome. Okay, so yeah, let's continue, I suppose. The 13th book of Hermes Trismegistus of Sense and Understanding. Yesterday, Asclepius, I delivered a perfect discourse, but now I think it necessary and sweet of that to dispute also of sense. I don't like the sound of this. For sense and understanding seem to differ, because the one is material and the other essential. But unto me they appear to be both one or united and not divided in men. I mean, for in other creatures sense is united into nature, but in men to understanding. But the mind differs from understanding as much as a god from divinity. For divinity is is that even Greek? Yeah, it's Greek. I don't know what that says. Divinity is Greek something from under God and understanding from the mind, being the sister of the word or speech, and they the instruments one of the other. For neither is the word pronounced without understanding, neither is understanding manifested without the word. Therefore, sense and understanding do both flow together into a man, as if they are enfolded one within the other. For neither is it possible without sense to understand, nor can we have sense without understanding. And yet is it possible for the time being that the understanding may understand without sense, as they that fancy visions in their dreams. Of course, what he's referencing here in archaic terms is, I think, transcendental consciousness. Samadhi, or some similar state. But it seems unto me that both the operations are in the visions of dreams, and that the sense is stirred up out of sleep into awakening. For man is divided into a body and a soul, when both parts of the sense accord one with the another. Then is the understanding childed, or brought forth by the mind pronounced. For the mind brings forth all intellections or understanding, good ones when it receiveth good seed from God, and the contrary when it receives them from devils. For there is no part of the world void of the devil, which entering in privately sowed the seed of his own proper operation. And the mind did make pregnant, or did bring forth that which was sown, adulteries, murders, striking of parents, sacrileges, impieties, stranglings, throwing down headlong, and all other things which are the work of evil demons. And the seeds of God are few, but great and fair and good, virtue and temperance and piety. And the piety is the knowledge of God, whom whosoever knoweth be full of all good things, hath divine understanding, not like the many. And therefore they that have that knowledge neither please the multitude, nor the multitude them. But they seem to be mad, and to move laughter, hatred, and despise, and many times also murdered. For we have already said that wickedness must dwell here, being in her own region. For her region is the earth, not the world, as some will sometimes say, blaspheming. But the godly or God-worshipping man, laying hold on knowledge, will despise or tread under all these things, for they be evil to other men, yet to him all things that are good. By the way, he just accused me of blasphemy for arguing with him a minute ago, because what he meant by the earth, evil is of the earth and not of the world, that we would use the word universe. So again, he's suggesting that it is solely on account of men that evil exists. And I find that ridiculous. Everything is the product of the confluence of forces to some extent. Once someone becomes aware and makes a choice, then they are culpable. But the godly or God-worshipping man, laying hold on knowledge, will despise or tread under all these things. For though they be evil to other men, yet to him all things are good. And upon mature consideration, he refers all things to knowledge, and that which is most to be wondered at, he alone makes evil things good. One reference there is to alchemy, basically, that all of these confluences of forces that I mentioned a minute ago are basically there for the potential that they can be transmuted. So things of darkness and, you could think coal becoming diamonds, or death becoming life, Even though evil exists, every single thing that happens ultimately is undergoing a process of transmutation from darkness to light. But that's just during this phase of the systole and diastole, expansion and contraction, solvet coagula, if it's true that matter eventually will all break down and return to light, that's the physical process, and it's reflected in everything else because it's the one thing that's happening. But I return again to my discourse of sense. It is therefore a proper thing to man to communicate and conjoin sense and understanding. But every man, as I said before, doth not enjoy understanding, for one man is material and another essential. And he that is material with wickedness, as I said, received from the devils the seed of understanding. But they that are good, they that are with the good essentially are eared with God. For God is the workman of all things, and when he work, he useth nature. He maketh all things good like himself. But these things that are good are in the use of operation unlawful. For the motion of the world, stirring up generations, makes qualities, infesting some with evilness and purifying some with good. And the world, Asclepius, hath a particular sense and understanding, not like to man's, nor so various or manifold, but a better and more simple. For the sense and understanding of the world is one, in that it makes all things and unmakes them again into itself. For it is the organ or instrument of the will of God. And it is so organized or framed and made for an instrument of God that receiveth all seeds into itself from God, and keeping them in itself, it maketh all things effectually, and dissolving them, reneweth all things. And therefore, like a good husbandman of life, when things are dissolved or loosened, he affords, by the casting of seed, renovation to all things that grow. There is nothing that the world, doth not beget or bring forth alive, and by its motion it makes all things alive. And it is at once both the place and the workman of life. But the bodies are from the matter in a different manner. For some are of earth, some of water, some of air, some of fire, and all are compounded. But some are more compounded, and some are more simple. They that are compounded are the heavier, and they that are less are the higher. And the swiftness of the motion of the world makes the varieties of the qualities of generation, for the spiration or influence being most frequent, extendeth unto the body's qualities, which within fullness, which is of life. Therefore, God is the father of the world, but the world is father of the things in the world. And the world is the son of God, but things in the world are the sons of the world. And therefore it is well called, Greek word, I don't know, the world that is an ornament, because it adorneth and beautifieth all things with the variety of generation and indeficiency of life, which the unweariedness of operation and the swiftness of necessity with the mingling of elements and the orders of things done. Therefore it is necessarily and properly called the world. For all living things, both the sense and the understanding, cometh into them from without, inspired by that which compasseth them about, and continueth them. And the world, receiving it once from God, as soon as it was made, hath it still whatever it once had. But God is not as it seems to some who blaspheme through superstition, without sense and without mind or understanding. For all things that are, O Asclepius, are in God and made by him and depend on him, some working by bodies, some moving by a soul like essence, some quickening by a spirit, and some receiving the things that are weary, and all very fitly. Or rather I say that he hath them not, but I declare the truth. He is all things, not receiving them from without, but exhibiting them outwardly. And this is the sense and understanding of God, to move all things always. And there shall never be any time when any of these things that are shall fail or be wanting. When I say the things that are, I mean God, for the things that are God hath, and neither is there anything without him, nor he without anything. These things, O Asclepius, will appear to be true, if thou understand them, but if thou understand them not, incredible. For to understand is to believe, but not to believe is not to understand. For my speech or words reach not unto the truth, but the mind is great, and being led or conducted for a while by speech, is able to attain to the truth. This is kind of an important point because one of the differences between this sort of system and a lot of other systems is that faith is not demanded or required. A wise magician once said, "We give certainty, not faith." It is an insult to the dignity of a person to expect them to believe something without reason. And so that's a little amendment there. And understanding all things roundabout and finding them consonant and agreeable to those things that were delivered and interrupted by speech, believeth, and in that good belief resteth. To them, therefore, that understand the things that have been said of God, they are credible. But to them that understand them not, incredible. And let these things, and thus many things, be spoken concerning understanding and sense. Checking with the chat again. These have been shorter than I was expecting. So, our life on Earth is like a short vacation. Yeah, I mean, one of the wildest things I've ever heard is that the entire life of the universe is followed by a period wherein, what's up, Empress? Wherein, how do you say it? The black holes will have even run out of fuel, basically. And so they kind of disperse. And so there will be black holes for something like, I don't know, some billion septillion years or something. And then after that, just an absolute vast nothingness that will eventually collapse back into itself, into the singularity, according to certain theories, including the mysticism of Hermeticism. And that period, after all the stars have died, is so long relative to the life of the universe that it's kind of the equivalent of like a firework relative to the life of the universe before this period, It really is a tremendously incomprehensible thing to try to reason through the possibilities and to not become lost in the abyss in the process. This is why we have to tether ourselves to knowledge and reason, but also to doubt and objectivity and detachment. Balancing doubt with confidence is a tremendously difficult balancing act, you know. Fear of the unknown. What is that Huxley quote? It is fear of the labyrinthine flux and the inhospitable strangeness of the world that has driven men into the systems prepared for them by philosophers and the founders of religion. Weary with much wandering through the maze of phenomena. Don't tell me I forgot. Weary with much wandering through the maze of phenomena, frightened by the inhospitable strangeness of the world, men have rushed into these systems as if running from a well-lit or a dark and frightening jungle into a well-lit and commodious house, and people have been burned at the stake for questioning the color of the door or the shape of one of the windows. You know, all of this confusion and division and insanity with the politics of the United States right now is fundamentally driven by fear of the unknown. This is what props up religion. This is what props up despotism. This is what props up fascism. This is what drives hatred. But when Hermes talks about aligning oneself with God, what he really means is the creative principle, the organizing principle, you could call it. The general trajectory of the creative, impulse is good enough. And truth is self-substantiating. Truth provides a foundation of substance. And my suspicion, since I was a small child, is that truth is not actually subjective. It's not hidden from us. It doesn't lie in any of the political doctrines or religious dogmas. It is available to anyone that desires to see it. Our current predicament is that there has been a tremendous amount of effort put into introducing interference patterns in the beings of people so that that process is nigh impossible. It's going to be an interesting couple of months, folks. Penrose's conformal cyclic cosmology is a theory which essentially states that all particles with mass decay or mutually annihilate, leaving behind only photons. Yeah. And see, you know, one of the reasons that this is all so interesting to me, you know, Bohm and Penrose and Hammeroff too, you have to include because he's partnered with Penrose. That idea of light descending into matter and sort of crystallizing through a certain process and then eventually redintegrating back from whence it came, is present in numerous ancient models, you know, and we are seeing across the board right now emergent systems, you know, or evidence emerging in support of panpsychism and non-neural cognition and memory. You know, we can't really say consciousness because that's a difficult thing to really measure or locate. We don't really even. Holy shit, that's a big spider. Damn, dude. Ugh. God, we're in Peru, for those of you that don't know. Not in the jungle, but there are these house spiders. I don't know what they are, but they're everywhere, and they get really big, and that's a really big one. Oh my God, man, I was walking down the driveway the other day, and there was one on me. I'm just scanning the chat again to see where we're at. Oh, yeah. So what I was saying, you guys know this. I talk about it all the time, and I'm sure you're all the types of people that follow this kind of stuff, or you wouldn't be here. Um, but evidence for this sort of panpsychist reality is becoming overwhelmingly. It's incredible to me that they're even managing to divide people's attention, I guess, or I don't really know exactly what it is, but Michael Levin, for example, should be a household name. The fact that morphological stuff has been observed that disputes neo-Darwinism and even epigenetics, everyone should know that, you would think. The correlation between even the old Kabbalistic system of, the light comes down and becomes matter and then is sent back as light. And now we have our greatest physicist probably has proven this is true. You know what I mean? It's overwhelming, the case for this stuff at this point. And somehow they're managing to fragment the stuff and keep it from sort of coagulating in a holistic model. It's really wild. I guess it's the algorithm to some extent. But one of the reasons I know it's true is that I have seen numerous times over the last 6 months researchers announcing that they have done something that Michael Levin did 13 years ago. How is it that I'm not a scientist, that's not my main, I follow stuff, but, you would think that any serious researcher would be aware of revelations that have paradigm shifting magnitude. But it doesn't look that way. Somehow, these things are being occulted from people. It's kind of hard for me to imagine that the algorithms are actually that adept. It could be tunnel vision of people, and it doesn't even require a conspiracy. I don't really know. I do know that it is essential that we tie all of these things together and put the model on display. I'm doing my best, but the algorithm doesn't like me much, so I don't know how far I'm going to get. But it really is a unique opportunity for us to make a metaphysical model that is completely congruent, and not only congruent, but supported by evidence. One thing that kind of gives me hope and faith, I guess, is that it's not really possible to suppress emergent properties, right? You can put your thumb over a hose and eventually the water's going to blow your thumb off. And everything that happens is of that nature. They're all forces. They all have movement and development and process. So, it's not possible, I don't think, to permanently disrupt this process. In fact, I don't think that's even supposed to happen. The pressure, the opposition, the chaos, it's all catalyst, really. It's all fuel. Without the pressure, there's no diamonds. So, the fact that we have this moment here where technology poses almost equal parts threat and promise, and we have existential threats all over the planet, threats to our freedom. That is necessary in order to produce a third thing of a higher order. This is a stricture upon our reality imposed by the governance of natural law. So, I'm not saying that I don't look out at the world almost every day and just go, holy fuck, man. Like, there's just these zombies are just going to do us in, and they're overlords. And it seems like every goddamn day it's crazier. But then I remind myself that that's the pressure, and the ratio, you say, well, there's, how many NPCs for every initiate, or however you want to think about it. How much coal is there for every diamond? The same laws will produce the same effects on all systems. Keter is in Malkut, but Malkut is in Keter after another fashion, is how you would put it if you were a Kabbalist. And that's crazy too, because Keter is light and Malkut is matter in one sense. And matter's light in a standing wave. And light has an electromagnetic basis, which makes it matter after another fashion. So, and this is what, is really so important about these systems. This way of thinking is the only thing I've seen that produces like proof of what we might call parapsychological phenomena, or, that there are fruits, meaningful fruits of mysticism. That these kind of truths, that although they are in a way not directly observable, more or less provable. And actually, at this point, they are observable. If you eat San Pedro cactus, will you get high off eating it raw? Yeah, but I wouldn't recommend it. Pretty bitter, and you're going to have to eat quite a lot. Have I encountered wandering spiders? Oh, yeah. In the jungle. We had them in our house. There's a video on my channel in my shorts where my partner had gone into the bathroom, and when she reached for the toilet paper roll and pulled it, there was a giant Brazilian wandering spider on the... And those are bad. If you get bitten by those, you actually have a good chance of dying. Okay, so does anybody else have anything to throw out there? Questions, comments? Please hit the like button, share, subscribe, consider becoming a patron. We're demonetized. So our community is our support. We are having events that everyone should come to. What's going on? JD. Thoughts on veils upon Earth? I don't know exactly what you mean by that. You would have to expand a little bit. I mean, one interpretation of the idea of the veil from the occult is that it's actually like a Fourier transform. That all of these things that we spoke about in superstitious terms in the past have some sort of mechanistic basis. There's some way that they function. And the conversion of the ideal to the actual, like the universe is holographic, and it is to some extent, and maybe fundamentally, a mind. And so the idea is that there is some sort of process for converting the imagination of the universal mind into physical manifestation. And that veil that does that is functionally or mathematically a Fourier transform. But I don't know if that's what you meant. Might have missed, but I'm very interested with the link between Hermes and the dragons. Oh, well, that's not really dragons. It's a dragon. The Pymander was a dragon of light that appeared and conferred this knowledge upon Hermes and taught him. It was Hermes' teacher was a dragon called Poimander, Pymander. I noticed in this translation it's spelled differently almost every time. I don't know what's up with that. If there's a reason, because like the Tetragrammaton in the Jewish mystical system has different arrangements to imply different aspects or facets of the deity. So I don't know if they spell Pymander, Poimander, and Pimander and all of these things differently all the time, just because it was a translation, or if there's actually something implied by the differences. So, questions and topics for discussion, going once, going twice. Usually, like when I give up and go to end the stream, I'll see the questions because we have a lot of lag, so people are often, you guys are behind quite a bit. All right, guys. Well, in that case, I guess I'm going to check out because I have a video to make, and it's going to be wonderful. I'm a little bit concerned, though, that they're going to block it because it's going to have copyrighted music, and you never know until you post it whether you're going to get away with it or not. So I hope I'm able to get that out there. And by the way, for my patrons also, I'm going to make a bunch of playlists as a sort of companion to the video. Okay, guys, thank you so much for spending this time with me. Please hit the like button, support the channel, turn on your bell notifications, and I'll see you. I think I'm going to take a night off with my partner, eat some fungus tomorrow. By the way, you guys, if you haven't tried Psilocybe natalensis, it's perfect. The perfect species of mushroom. Absolutely divine. Okay, guys, good night.